Hola a todos, soy Javier Poveda y esto es De Bien TV, el canal donde te lo vas a pasar de bien mientras aprendes geografía, historia del arte y este año un poquito de economía y de empresariales. Tengo un pelo por aquí. Este vídeo va dirigido para primera sección del CEIPSO, el Encinar de Torrelodones. In this video we are going to study the Unit 7, the first civilizations, Mesopotamia and Egypt. So, let's go, what a hype. And here we are, the first civilizations, with this beautiful picture from Assassin's Creed, this concept art. So let's start. The first civilizations, which appeared around 3500 BC, when the Neolithic villages in some regions developed into cities. This is why they are called the first urban civilizations. This occurred in several places at the same time, or more or less at the same time, in the world, mainly Mesopotamia first, and then Egypt, India, and China. We are going to study the first two. They were established in large river valleys. Mesopotamia, the valleys of the Tigris and the Euphrates. Egypt on the banks of the Nile. India in the Indus, China in the Yellow River. And this is why they are called fluvial civilizations. And these cities developed because of the result of, or as a result of agricultural developments. Why? Because these rivers, the water level rose at certain times of the year, and when the water level went back or low down, the flooded land was fertilized by the sediments in the water, the silt, el limo, and this soil was very fertile, so large harvests were obtained and the cities could develop. In order to make better use of the water and avoid uncontrollable flooding, which sometimes happened and caused death, the hydraulic works were constructed, mainly canals, canales, and dikes, diques, which are walls to contain the water. So, where did the first civilizations appear? In Egypt, the Nile, in Mesopotamia, Tigris and the Euphrates, in India and in China. This is Mohenjo-Daro in India, in today's Pakistan, because there are more civilizations besides Egypt and Mesopotamia. And this is what happened, okay? The water level rose of the river, this is an example of the line, and covered most or many land, okay, of the banks, and covered the banks of the river. Then, when the water level went back to its original level, this soil, this silt, was laid, and the people used it to cultivate it, and it was very, very fertile, okay? And then they harvested and they could use it for the winter. And to control this flooding, they used these canals and these walls, which are called the dikes. And these are historical civilizations. Why? Because of the emergence of writing. Writing appeared first in Mesopotamia and Egypt around the 4th millennium BC. And why? Because of practical purposes, keeping accounts or recording commercial transactions. Remember the trade. And only a few people could write, and they usually were government officials called scribes, los escribas. And this is very important for us, for historians, because it's a very important source to study the ancient civilizations or to study history in general. And the emergence of writing marks the end of the prehistory and the beginning of the ancient history. We are going to study ancient history right now. This is the first writing, cuneiform writing, which was used by the Mesopotamians. Okay, they pushed a stick on wet clay. Okay, so we have found a lot of these clay tablets, okay, with cuneiform writing. And they use this kind of symbols to write. Okay, this is a syllabic alphabet. And if you want to know how did they do it, here you have an excellent video, which I'm not going to show you right now. The Egyptians used 3 types of writing. The most famous one is the hieroglyphic, okay, like this. This is a relief. But and this type of writing was used in reliefs in the temples mostly, okay, which uses pictograms, uses pictures to write things. But in a normal, in the everyday use, they use two easier ways of writing, which are the hieratic writing and the demotic writing. How do we know what they wrote? Because the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, which is a stone with a message from in time of the Ptolemy Egypt, and in this picture the same message is written in hieroglyphic, in demotic, and in ancient Greek. So since we can understand ancient Greek, we can translate this and finally translate the hieroglyphic writing. So the society, since the increased agricultural production happened and the trade also increased, there were prosperity, and when there is prosperity, the social differences appear. And a hierarchical society, una sociedad jerárquica, o sea, con autoridades unos encima de otros, appeared. The society was composed by the following groups: a privileged minority, so few people who were rich and who had the power. They lived in big houses and palaces, and the most powerful position was the king in Mesopotamia, also called the Ensi, and the pharaoh in Egypt. And below them there were the priests, sacerdotes, the government officials, and the landowners. Then we have a mass of unprivileged people, the rest of the people who work for the privileged minority, the farmers, the herdsmen, los pastores, the fishermen, los pescadores, and a small percentage of merchants and craftsmen, mercaderes y artesanos. And they live modestly in small adobe houses. And finally, at the bottom of this social pyramid, we have the slaves, who were servants and were owned by the people. They were a possession of the people, mostly from the privileged minority. They had no rights, and you could become a slave by being a prisoner of war, or also because you couldn't pay your debts. So you became a slave of your of the guy or the people you owe them, or you owe, I mean. This is a diagram of this social pyramid, in this case in ancient Egypt. The pharaohs, the viziers and priests, this is a government official, the scribes, also officials, then craftsmen, artists, peasants, and finally the slaves and the servants. And with the writing, the first laws appeared. Why the laws are necessary? Because powerful people abused their powers. But if the laws are written and they are publicly displayed, they could not abuse or make these abuses. So they created these written laws. The first laws appear in Mesopotamia, and it's the Code of Hammurabi from the mid-18th century BC. It's a Babylonian code of laws, okay, in this stele, okay. And here, well, here you have the king and the god, and here the laws are written, okay. And this was a very strict law, okay. Here you have some examples of the laws of the Code of Hammurabi. So, Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is called like this. It's a Greek word between rivers, Mesopotamos, because the region was situated between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. It was a very fertile region, so it was very suitable for a human settlement. And there were several Mesopotamian civilizations, the first one being the Sumerians. Sumer is located at the south of Mesopotamia, and they lived in independent city-states. So the city is a country itself, and it controlled their surrounding territory. Some examples: Ur, Lagash, Eridu, Uruk, Kish, Uma, and more. They were protected by defensive walls because they frequently fought each other. And each city was governed by a king, which was also the high priest of the city, and they used the word Ensi. The citizens had to pay tributes at the temple, which became the center of the economic activity and maybe the most important building of the city. And with since the cities gained wealth, they could afford armies, and with these armies they attacked the rest of the cities. And so the different empires or different civilizations succeeded one after another. In Mesopotamia, the most important civilizations were in this order: first the Sumerians, then the Akkadians from Akkad, which is at the north, then the Babylonians, which controlled both Sumer and Akkad, then the Assyrians, which were most at the north and the very, very north of Mesopotamia, later the Neo-Babylonians, or the Babylonians once more, and finally the Persians, which came from the east, from the today's Iran, came and controlled all that area, and later they were conquered by the Greeks. Okay, so first the Sumerians here in the south, then the Akkadians here, which capital was here in Akkad, then Babylonia, which controlled most of both the rivers, with the capital in Babylon. Later, the Assyrians here, which controlled most of the Middle East, with the capital in Nínive, como se dice en castellano. And later, the Babylonians again, which are not shown here, and then the Persians came from here. This is Persia, okay? This is, and now pictures, que es lo que mola. This is a reconstruction of Ur with the temple and the palace here in the center. Here's the Euphrates River, okay, here, and satellite view with the reconstruction. And this is how the temple and the palace look like, okay, with the gates of Ishtar here and the ziggurat. We will talk about this now. Culture and religion. The Mesopotamians made important scientific advances in astronomy, in mathematics, and in many other branches of the science. They knew a lot about mathematics, and they invented a sexagesimal system, so a mathematical system with base 60. Okay, this is how they depicted the numbers, okay, from 1 to 60. Well, 60 has the same symbol as 1. And they created a calendar based on the cycles of the moon, so every 30 years. Regarding religion, they were polytheistic. They believed in many gods, in more than one god. Okay, and they worshipped them, los veneraban, in sacred buildings called temples, and the most important part of the temple was the ziggurat. Okay, here you have some examples of mathematics in Mesopotamia. Okay, for example, they knew about the Halley's Comet, and they knew about the square root of 2, la raíz de 2, la conocían, o sea, eran unas máquinas, and also about the later called Pythagorean theorem. Okay, these are Pythagorean triples. Okay, in a clay tablet. And these are all the gods of Mesopotamia, okay? The most important, Marduk, Enlil, Enlil, and Ishtar. Okay, there are a lot, so we are not going to get deeper into this issue. Okay, this is Ishtar, this is Marduk, etc. There are a lot. And now regarding art. In art, we are going to see architecture, sculpture, and painting. In architecture, they used bricks, semicircular arches, and vaults, bóvedas. They used bricks because there were not enough stone to build edifications, to build buildings, so they used bricks, ladrillos. A brick is a piece of clay baked in an oven. Barro cocido, básicamente, o arcilla cocida. It was used as the main building materials as there was very little stone, and they also used glazed ceramics or tiles, cerámica vidriada o azulejo, to decorate the brick walls. A semicircular arch is a semicircular structure with a supporting point at each end. I will show you a picture later, and a vault is a roof in the form of an arch. What was the main sacred building? The temple, and in the temple the most important part was the ziggurat, which is like a stepped pyramid, okay? Several levels of brick terraces in the form of a stepped pyramid. And they made processions, which are groups of worshippers, o sea, procesiones, which climbed the flights of stairs to the sanctuary, which was located at the top of the ziggurat, okay? And it contained the statue of the god or the goddess of the temple. And then the most important civil building was the palace. Let's take a look. This is an arch, okay, a semicircular arch, un arco de medio punto, el mismo que usaban los romanos, and this is a vault, okay? It's a corridor which roof is made out of several arches, okay? Put one behind another. These are the gates of Istar, made out of bricks with glazed ceramics, as you can see here, okay? The bricks are covered with these glazed ceramics with different colors, okay? And this is the Istar gate with the procession street. The processions came through here and then they climbed the ziggurat, which is located behind. Okay, they came here, this is a procession, here, and then they went to the ziggurat, Temenanki, in Babylon, and climbed here, and this is the sanctuary at the top. Okay, here we can see this. The stairs, the processions, and here they are building the last part of the ziggurat. And these are the remains that we have today. This is the ziggurat of Ur, just the first floor or the first step, okay? And this is the reconstruction, okay? This is the sanctuary here. And the ziggurat of Duruntas, okay? As you can see here, it is made out of a lot of millions of bricks. And another important building was the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the ancient wonders of the world, as Herodotus says. And here the ziggurat. And also in sculpture, we have three types of sculpture. Reliefs, which are sculptures which protrude from a surface, so sculptures which are carved in the wall. Steles, which are commemorative reliefs on a vertical stone, like the Code of Hammurabi, and freestanding sculptures or statues, which are usually representing gods or governors. The freestanding sculpture is a sculpture that is not part of another surface, so you can go and surround it, okay? You can watch it from several points of view, front, the side, or the back, okay? O sea, una escultura que puedes rodear y observar desde diferentes puntos de vista. Un relieve no se puede porque está pegado a un muro. So, let's see some examples here. Gudea, Kurlil, which are officials, or these, well, they are usually depicting people from the privileged minorities, okay? This is a relief, which is carved in the stone, the stele of the vultures. Well, no, I mean, these are steles, okay? These high vertical stones, okay? Which are reliefs here. This is the victory stele of Naram-Sin and the stele of Melisipak II. Okay, and these had a commemorative purpose. Also, here we have this is a relief, the Lamassus, which was a protective deity. He has a human head, a body of a bull, and bird wings. Okay, here, these are in the British Museum, and these are reliefs. These are Assyrian soldiers and Assurbanipal, which is an Assyrian killing a Babylonian, I mean, killing a lion, and the wounded lion, which is very famous, and these are all reliefs, okay? And this is the standard of Ur, which is also a relief decorated with these glazed ceramics, and it is very, very, very beautiful. And finally, the frieze of the archers. This is a Persian frieze, but it is also very famous, so that is why the reason why I'm showing you this. And one of the first board games of the world, the Royal Game of Ur. And that's all from Mesopotamia. Now, Egypt. The Egyptian civilization, ancient Egypt civilization, developed on the banks of the River Nile. Okay, River Nile is in the northeast of Africa. Okay, this is the River Nile, and these green areas are the banks of the river, because the rest is desert. Okay, the Egyptians called this land the Black Land. Okay, and the rest, the desert which was the fertile land, the Black Land, and the rest the Red Land. La Tierra Roja, la Tierra Negra. And during the summer, the river floods due to the torrential rains that fall in the upper course, because they have tropical climate here in Ethiopia and Sudan, the center of Africa. And the Mediterranean and the deserts protected them from their enemies, and that's a reason why they could develop more or less peacefully, more or less, because they were attacked, of course. And they could develop because the river does like this. We have seen this, okay? The flood in between June and September, then the river goes back and leaves this silt, this very fertile soil, which is later cultivated by the Egyptians. And this is the same that happens today. Here, the fertile land is the red lands. This is an actual picture of today. And the red lands, the desert. So, the Egyptian civilization developed throughout 3,000 years. They started in the 4th millennium BC when the Neolithic villages built these first hydraulic works and the settlements grew. These cities were taking over other cities until two kingdoms were formed. The Upper Egypt, okay, in the southern part, and the Lower Egypt in the delta at the north. They were unified by the first pharaoh, which is legendary. Historians thought that he may not have existed, which is called Narmer or Menes. And the history of Egypt is divided in several periods. First, we have the early dynastic period, where the two kingdoms were independent from each other. Then the Old Kingdom, the period of the pyramids, the Middle Kingdom, the New Kingdom, and finally the late period, in which Egypt was occupied first by the Nubians, the Assyrians, the Persians, and finally the Greeks. The Romans conquered Egypt in the year 30 BC when they made Cleopatra kill herself, and they became a province of the Roman Empire. Okay, so here, this part here is the Lower Egypt with the red crown, and from Memphis to the south, this is the Upper Egypt with the white crown, okay? This is the Narmer palette, and here, this is the first pharaoh. Here he's wearing the white crown, and here he's wearing the red crown, the Upper Egypt and the Lower Egypt. So, the ruler of Egypt was called Pharaoh, and he was considered a living god. He had all the power, and he ruled with the help of some officials, which were called the viziers, los visires, una especie de ministros, and the nomarchs, los nomarcas, which ruled over a province, which was called a nomos, or nomes in plural, un nomo en castellano, and also the priests. And the position of the pharaoh was passed down to the members of the same dynasty. This means that the next pharaoh after the previous one was the son, usually was the son of the previous pharaoh. And there were 31 dynasties of Egypt after or until the conquer of Egypt from the Macedonians by Alexander the Great in the 4th century. Okay, there were a lot. Here, again, Lower and Upper Egypt. Okay, these are the nomes, or each portion is a nomos of Egypt. Okay, in Upper Egypt and in the Lower Egypt. Vamos a ver. So, the life. The Egyptian economy was based on fluvial agriculture and trade. What did they cultivate? Cereals for making bread and beer, legumes, grapes, and flax for making clothes, okay, o sea, lino. They also ate fish, of course. And the Nile was also used as a means of transport, como un medio de transporte, both for people and goods, okay, by boat. And why? Because the Egyptians traded with most of the Mediterranean, with the Greeks, with the Turkish, the Hittites, with Phoenicia, with Canaan here, with Nubia at the south, and with Libya here. They sold the cereals, the wine, and the craftwork they made, and they obtained in exchange wood, because there were very few trees in Egypt, wood mostly from Phoenicia, and metal and slaves from these countries. Okay, This here, some pictures, here they are cultivating, this is wheat, and they think this is papyrus or barley, I don't know. And here they used plows, as you can see, and here they are fishing with this papyrus, and here they are trading, okay? For example, this funny elephant. And this is how an Egyptian city would look like, okay? Many adobe houses, okay, and with many of them, okay, you have living quarters and you have workshops, okay, because the artisans work in their own homes. And another picture, here they are cultivating the land, here you have a canal, and this is a granary to storage the cereals, okay? You can see it again. Here they are trading, these are trading, these are fishing, and these are using the canals and verting this the wheat here in the granaries and cultivating the land, okay, which was flooded the previous months. And this is an actual picture of today because they, regarding agriculture, they use the same methods nowadays, more or less. Here they are drinking beer with this strife, con la pajita esta, están bebiendo cerveza, vaya. Se me acaba de olvidar cómo se dice pajita en inglés. Con pajita, vaya. Okay. This is how the clothes they wore, okay, more or less. And this is another board game. The most important board game in Egypt was the Senate. So, culture and religion. The Egyptians, like the Mesopotamians, made important advances in mathematics and astronomy, mostly to predict the flooding of the Nile to increase agricultural production. They were the ones who first used the decimal numeral system, the same that we use today, and they used a calendar based on the time that passes between the first and the second flooding of the Nile, which means a year of 365 days, the same that we use today. Their religion was also polytheistic. They believed in many gods, but the most important thing of the Egyptian religion is the belief in the afterlife. They thought, or they believed, that when someone died, the Ka, which is more or less the soul of the individual, traveled into the afterlife if it passed the judgment of Osiris, in which the heart was weighed to discover if they had sinned against the feather of truth. And to ensure that the Ka will return to the body in the afterlife, the Egyptians mummified their corpses. So this means that the body was embalsamado with oils and wrapped in linen, envuelto en tiras de lino, una momia. And they extracted the main organs and placed them in containers which were called the canopic jars. These little vases in which they deposited these organs, okay, but just a few organs, okay. For example, the brain, they threw it to the garbage. Let's see some pictures. This is the stele of the Princess Nefertibet, and here you have the numbers that the Egyptians used. Here you have this table, and here the depicted numbers. This is a Nile meter in the Elephantine Island, which is at the south, the very south of Egypt, and with this they could predict, because the Nile didn't flood at the same level at the same time. For example, it started flooding the north and then the south traveled. The south of Egypt and then the north of Egypt. Okay, and this tool to predict the flooding. Okay, if the flooding was scarce, they had to storage more food, and if not, they could save it for the years to come. These are some of the Egyptian gods. The most important are Horus, Amun, Ra, Isis, and Osiris. Okay, but they had thousands, well, not thousands, but hundreds of gods. Here, the most important is triad: Horus, Osiris, Isis, and Ra, which carried the sun above the sky in his chariot. Here, Nut or Nut, the sky here, Geb, the earth, and in between Ra traveling in his solar bark or sometimes a chariot carrying the sun during the day. This is the embalming or the mummification. This is the process in which a priest of Anubis, which was the god of mummification, oversaw the process of mummification. Okay, here they are wrapping the dead body with linen, the body of Tutankhamun. This is an actual mummy from the Roman period, but this is how they look like nowadays. Okay, these are the canopic jars. Here they storage the stomach, the intestines, the lungs, and the liver. Estómago, intestinos, pulmones, e hígado. Okay, the only organ that remained in the body was the heart. Okay, because it had to be weighed in the judgment of Osiris. Later, the embalmed and the wrapped body, the mummy, was placed in a sarcophagus. Okay, like this. Like a wooden box in which the corpse was placed. And they not only mummified the humans and humans, but also some animals like cats or peregrine falcons. This is the actual body of Ramesses II, the most important pharaoh of all the ancient Egypt. As you can see, it is very well preserved after 3,000 years. Okay, it even he even has his hair. Okay, it hasn't root. And if you want to see how the mummification process happened, here you have a cinematic from the Assassin's Creed, if you want to see it. This is the Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead was placed in the sarcophagus, and here in one of them it depicts the judgment of Osiris. This is the dead person, and the heart here was weighed in this scale of Ma'at against the feather of the truth, which is here. Okay, if you have sinned, the heart weighed more than the feather, then you were devoured by this monster, this mythological creature, which can't remember the name. And after that, he had to face the questions of Osiris. And if the person hadn't sinned, they were allowed into the afterlife. Okay. Finally, the art: architecture, sculpture, and painting. Remember, first, architecture. The Egyptian architecture is colossal, is monumental, is very big. They use stone, which is stronger than adobe, as you can see here. Their constructions were massive in a very big scale, and they used flat roofs supported on lintels. Okay, lintel es un dintel, is a flat roof. Es esto de aquí. Esto es un dintel, a lintel, a flat roof. Okay, placed on top of these columns. So, the most important monuments were the following. First, the temples, which were buildings dedicated to the gods and in which where the priests only could enter. Okay, normal people or common people weren't allowed to enter the temples. The most important ones: the temple of Karnak, of Luxor, and of Abu Simbel. This is the Karnak temple complex, and this is the remain of the main building. Okay, this is the entrance, and this is the Sancta Sanctorum, where the statue of the god was located. Okay, this is the entrance, los pilonos, esto de aquí, que son estos muros, and the Sphinx Avenue. Okay, many temples have this wide street with a lot of sphinxes on each side. And as you can see here, the scale is very, very big. That is why the Egyptian architecture is called colossal architecture. Okay, this is the Karnak temple reconstruction. This is how it looked like. And this is the temple of Luxor. Again, these big walls, the statues of the gods, and then these lintels here, okay, on top of these columns. And this is how it looks today in the city of Luxor, and this is how it may look like in ancient Egypt. Okay, these are the processions with the offerings, but they stopped here. In the building, only the priests could enter. Okay, and here the statue of the god was located. Finally, the Abu Simbel temples, which are carved in this stone, and they are located, well, this is the entrance, okay, with Ra. This is the interior of the temple with these very big statues. Look at the size of these statues. This is an actual person, okay, they were very big and decorated with a lot of reliefs here, okay, with Nefertari and the gods with the pharaoh. Remember that the pharaoh himself was a god, okay. And this is the previous location of the temples. They were transported some, I think, 50 or 60 meters above when the modern Egyptians built the dam of, lo diré, la presa de, se me acaba de ir, de Nasser, Nasser Lake, in Aswan, José, viene aquí, tonto soy. And this is the temple of Hatshepsut, which was a female pharaoh in Deir el-Bahari. This is how it looked like, also carved in the stone. Y también nosotros tenemos el templo de Debo de Madrid, que nos fue donado por el gobierno egipcio en la época de Franco y se puede visitar al lado del Parque del Oeste. Visita recomendada, aunque no se puede entrar, creo. Bueno, besides the temples, we have the tombs, which were buildings that contain the burial chambers, las cámaras mortuorias, where the sarcophagus, which is a decorated coffin, un ataúd decorado, was placed with the mummy inside. We have three types of tombs: mastabas, pyramids, and hypogeums. A mastaba is a one-story, un piso, rectangular building with sloping walls. A pyramid is a succession of mastabas, one on top of each other. We know how they are. The most famous one are the Thousand in Saqqara, the Step Pyramid, and the Great Pyramids of Giza, in honor of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure pharaohs. And finally, a hypogeum, it's a tomb cut out of the rock, an excavated tomb, and hidden to prevent robbery, and most of them are located in the Valley of the Kings, which is near present-day Luxor, the ancient Thebes, which was the capital of the Upper Egypt. And the most famous one is the Tutankhamun's tomb. So, let's see, this is a mastaba, okay? A one-story building with sloped walls and mostly made out of bricks, but sometimes stone, which covered a burial chamber in the underground. These are pyramids, okay, with these shapes. This is the first pyramid, the Step Pyramid of Thousand in Saqqara, which has several floors, okay, in the shape of steps here with this camel. Okay, several views. This is the Meidum Pyramid, which collapsed because it wasn't very well constructed. This is the Bent Pyramid, or la pirámide inclinada, of Sneferu in Dashur. Okay, they started with this inclination, but they had to correct it because if not, the pyramid would have collapsed also. Okay, another view. This is the first flat side pyramid, the Red Pyramid of Sneferu in Dashur, and these are the Great Pyramids of Giza. Khafre, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. Keops, Kefren y Mykerinos. La más grande es la de Keops, ¿vale? They are very famous. They are in the plateau of Giza next to El Cairo. Okay, and this is how they would look like in ancient times. This is an idiot, a stupid guy who climbed the pyramid and later was arrested by the police. And I hope he's in jail, to be honest. But to be honest, the video is impressive. So if you want to see it, you can watch it. Not today. Don't do this. And this is the interior. Okay, the pyramids had these galleries with the burial chambers here. And also in Giza we have this very big sphinx, which is very famous. Then the hypogeums, or the hypogea, are located in the Valley of the Kings. Okay, here we have a lot of hypogea, a lot of excavated tombs below these mountains, and this is how they look like. There was a corridor with several rooms, and the most important rooms were the treasure chamber and the burial chamber where the sarcophagus was placed. Okay, and in the tomb was painted in the inside. Here you have a lot of examples of paintings in Ramesses, Nefertari, which was the wife of Akhenaton. No, Ramses, Ramesses III, and the most important, or the most famous tomb is the tomb of Tutankhamun. Why? Because it was located intact, okay? Most or almost all the tombs in the Valley of the Kings were sacked, were robbed, but this one was not, so it was found in its original state. I have uploaded in the virtual classroom a link to the diaries of Howard Carter, which was the archaeologist that discovered this tomb. That is Howard Carter, okay, and this is part of the photographies that were taken during his work. Okay, this is Tutankhamun, and wait a minute. This is, sorry, but Daisy was barking, the treasure of Tutankhamun with these chariots and these golden figures. And well, this is how it looked like when they discovered it. More treasures. If you want to see this slowly, you can click on the link that I have told you about. This is the shrine where the sarcophagus was placed. Regarding sculpture, the Egyptian sculpture was created for religious and was created for religious and funerary purposes. The most important works were made of stone, and the figures adopted unnatural positions to reflect their greatness and solemnity. Okay, they used the following characteristics. They were rigid, okay, without movement. The faces showed no emotion at all, and the most important figures were depicted larger than the others. The most important figures were the gods or the pharaohs. And most of the Egyptian sculpture was freestanding, but we also have a lot of reliefs in the temples. Let's see some examples. Okay, the Menkaure triad. This is Pharaoh Menkaure, one of the pyramids, and as you can see, it has almost no movement. They are very rigid, unlike all of these, and they are showing no emotions at all. You can't assure that they are happy or sad. Okay, and here you have a scribe. It has Rahotep and Nofret, and as a curiosity, they depicted the skin of the males with this brown color, and this white color they pictured the skin of the females, which was a convention of the Egyptian art. This is Akhenaten with his wife Nefertiti, this is a very famous sculpture. And they also made this sculpture in a very big scale. These are the colossi of Memnon. They also made reliefs. This is in Komombo. Okay, this is the god Sobek. Okay, and the pharaoh here. And these are Akhenaten and Nefertiti with their daughters. This is also a carved relief. And this is the temple of Ramesses III, in which here, as you can see, the pharaoh and the god are depicted in a very large scale, but their enemies are in a very small size, as well as these figures here. So the most important figures were way larger than the less important ones. And the gods, this is Roman Emperor Trajan, because the Egyptian culture continued under the Roman rule. Finally, painting. Painting was used to decorate the palaces, the temples, and the tombs. Also used in papyrus to illustrate the sacred books. We have seen the Judgment of Osiris before. The main characteristics were the use of flat colors, so without shading, the outlines of figures, los contornos, and the difference in the size of the figures, as well as in the sculpture. The most important characteristic is the canon of profile, because they are depicted like this, the limbs, los muslos, and the face in profile, so from the side, okay, but the chest is from the torso and one eye from one point from the front view. Okay, so one eye and the chest from the front, and the legs and the head from the side, which is an awkward depiction, but that is what they used. As you can see here, the legs from the side, the torso from the front, the head from the side, but the eye from the front. And this is the canon of profile. Okay, this is a folding scene, and this is a banquet scene, again the canon of profile, and this is the pool and the garden in the same tomb, and also in Papyrus. Okay, this is the Book of the Dead, the Judgment of Osiris. Again, Ramesses II. Here you can see, since Ramesses is the most important figure, he is depicted on a bigger scale than his enemies or the rest of his troops. Okay. Again, another example, the Siege of Dapur, and another example, an agricultural scene. Okay, the most important figures are larger than the less important ones. Again, there's family hunting in the marshes. Okay, the canon of profile again, side, side, front, front, and the head from the side. And this is the end. Okay, this is hieroglyphic writing. Here I think it's the end, and here no sé qué pone, pero no me acuerdo, pero I think it is keep calm and study Egypt or something like that. I'm not sure. Bueno, pues ya hemos acabado. Así que me ha quedado un vídeo extremadamente largo, pero es que las civilizaciones antiguas lo valen. Dicho esto, si has llegado hasta aquí, eres una máquina. Muchas gracias por ver el vídeo y nos vemos en el próximo, que será el último. No, miento, no será el último. Los griegos y luego los romanos, que si esto os ha parecido largo, lo vais a gozar. Nos vemos. Adiós.